Welcome to the Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies podcast. I'm Jeremy,
I'm Andy.
and this week we are returning
Back
back
in 1999.
25 years ago to discuss once again some of the movies that were meaningful
Yeah.
that year. And this year we have two very different types of movies.
I'm really excited.
We've got a workplace comedy,
Yeah.
the workplace comedy,
The
I think
workplace
people would
comedy.
say.
Absolutely.
And then one of the most influential suspense thriller movies that
Yeah.
we've had a hard time putting our finger on. And I'll tell you what, watching it didn't make it any easier for me to put my finger on what genre.
I think it's a brand new show. It's like the suspense drama almost.
Yeah,
Well, we'll get to it.
we will. I was trying to decide which movie we should talk about first, and went back and forth, and I just landed on, you know what, I want to jump into your pick first.
Okay.
I think it's probably the one we're going to have more to say about.
Yeah.
It's definitely the one I just am excited to talk about maybe a little more, and that is The Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
The Sixth Sense is M. Night Shyamalan's debut film, and very few people have had as successful of a debut as he did with this movie. It was in every way a cultural phenomenon.
Oh, absolutely.
So not only the box office, the conversation, if it was like there weren't memes back then, but
Yeah.
whatever the equivalent to memes were,
It was it. Yeah.
I see dead people was that.
Became the thing.
I had one of those sarcastic T-shirts that said "I see dumb people." Like it just everything has a take on
Yeah.
that. Like it was just everywhere.
It became a thing.
It was massive.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it when we talked about you making this pick. It's probably been 20 years since I've seen this movie.
Me too.
And I had seen it a few times at least.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had a really good grasp on what the movie was. Like the type of thing where I was like, I could come in and talk about this movie without rewatching it.
Mhm.
But of course, I should rewatch it. I wanted to rewatch it, and I did rewatch it.
Mhm.
And when I rewatched it, I thought, man, I'm really glad I did, because as much as I remember the main beats,
You forget some of the in-between stuff.
I was feeling the 20-year gap
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
had, or whatever it is, from the last time I watched it, where I'm going like, oh yeah, like I kind of don't remember it really being like this,
Mhm.
or yeah, just, and if I'm 100% honest, there was a part of me that was really nervous to watch this again,
Sure.
because I knew there's elements of it that are of its time,
Yep.
or at least, if not of its time, I mean, the thing we just can't ever get around is this movie was so big in large part because of the twist, the surprise of
Yep.
what happens in the movie. And 20 years later, 25 years later, it's like, is it gonna be able to pull me into care when I know what's gonna happen?
Mhm.
That was the big question for me.
Yeah, so that's the thing with any movie that's based off of a twist. Does the movie still work once you know and have seen the twist? That's the ultimate test of a movie like The Sixth Sense.
Yeah. And this one, I would say, is, not to give too much away, but it has sort of two lives. It's got the before you know the twist life, and the first time you see the twist, and it's, you know,
big time.
and then it does have the next time you rewatch it where you go, okay, let me see if this,
Let me look at the little
it
breadcrumbs
telegraphed
they
it,
laid down.
and then that's what enjoyable. And so then I knew it had that. So then it's like, but once you've even experienced that, what is left
Yeah.
in this movie? Is it just an enjoyable story altogether on its own?
Yeah.
So one thing I did get a little bit of feedback from one of my students.
Oh.
Watched our last
Okay, great.
podcast,
Let's talk.
and the one feedback they gave me is like they hadn't seen the movie. They go, maybe give a summary of the movie for people who haven't seen it. And I was like,
we don't do that, do we?
In
We
general, we kind of function on like, well, surely people won't want to watch us talk all about the movie if they haven't seen it. So we function on the assumption people see it. But I guess we shouldn't. We
You're right.
should function on the
This
idea
is why
that,
feedback is so important.
exactly.
We love feedback.
So The Sixth Sense, a brief summary of the movie. Bruce Willis is our main character. He plays a child psychiatrist.
Mhm.
And in the beginning of the movie, he is confronted by a former patient who is clearly still quite disturbed,
Yeah.
and blames him for not being able to help him. He shoots Bruce Willis before shooting himself. And after that, we get this pan to the next,
What is it?
like the next
The next
fall
fall,
or something.
I think, yeah.
And Bruce Willis is obviously radically changed by this experience.
He is.
It is haunting him, some might say.
You might say that.
And he comes across Haley Joel Osment plays this young boy who reminds Bruce Willis' character a lot of the young man he couldn't help.
Right.
And so
It's your
he
classic story
yes.
of like, I
So
want to
it's kind of
help.
like I want to help him as a way of like redeeming this thing I
Redemption,
failed at before. And for a good almost hour of this movie, it's unclear like what's really wrong with this young boy who clearly has like issues and is very bizarre. Um, and then ultimately, what turns out is the reveal the young man finally gives him why he's so strange is that he sees ghosts. And the famous line, "I see dead people."
They're everywhere.
And then Bruce Willis is trying to help him through. Of course, there's the initial skepticism.
Sure you
and
are,
then,
buddy.
Yeah, like, well, how do I help this kid? Maybe he needs medication. And then the realization that I think their kid might be legitimate.
Mhm.
So that, of course, is the sixth sense, the ability to see things that other people can't see, to see ghosts or specters or whatever we're calling them. So that is the gist
That's
of
the gist of it.
the sixth sense. It's really not a movie like, although all that's very important, it's not like a heavy plot driven movie.
No, it's
It's a
a
very
pretty simple
story.
Yep.
And it's a pretty quiet story
It
for
is.
a ghost movie. And I think why it has such a hard time being categorized is it's not very aggressive in any way. It's
No.
such a still, quiet, calm movie. It really made me think like M. Night Shyamalan seems like one of those guys who is a student of film
Mm-hmm.
and felt like, I don't know what decade, like the 70s or something, were very influential to him or something.
I've seen him talk a lot about like Jaws and different movies that influenced him a lot.
Yeah.
Jaws and Close Encounters and stuff like that.
Because when I think about movies like that just seem to be very like patient, slow, still movies, I think of those like really older
Yep.
60s,
Oh,
70s,
absolutely.
sometime in there
Absolutely.
type movies. The other thing, one of my first notes that I wrote was, it is a very 90s movie, just in the quality of it.
Mhm.
I think it's 99 is such a weird year because
We
the
hadn't hit
different levels of quality though,
Yep.
even among the movies that we've reviewed already.
Uh-huh.
Like it's hard to believe The Sixth Sense was made the same year as Fight Club.
Yeah.
But also sometimes like it has to do with I had to rent the movie. I thought I had a place to watch it for free and I didn't, so I ended up spending like whatever the $4
Right.
to rent it. And maybe I didn't get the highest
Highest-
quality or
yeah.
something.
But that was
because-
a weird time when I don't think the HD was fully. It was like a transition period.
Right.
Yeah.
But like I know I can watch my Blu-ray of Fight Club and like the clarity is so
I know, right?
Another level than I'm watching this and being like, huh, did I not get? No, it's like it is HD. Like I thought
It's
it'd be
like
like clearer.
A little grainy almost, and yeah.
Yeah.
But in a weird way, it kind of helps the movie in a way, like the somber. It's a little bit of a dark movie. Like I don't know, I thought it fit kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of just a happy accident, I guess.
I mean, the movie that I would compare it to as far as like that element of it is we talked about the same thing with Bringing Out the Dead.
Yeah.
That year, Martin Scorsese.
Like that
like
grittiness almost to
Right.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. The other note I wrote is opening credits just over a black screen.
Yep.
Like that's something you just don't see anymore. Like
Nope.
there has to be all this visual stuff. Like we can't let people get bored during the credits.
Now,
And those credits just went black
your time.
screen,
Yep.
white words.
white words.
All the
It's
credits.
probably
full
like
credits.
soft music playing over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So my next note is I said this movie couldn't be made today.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, most people say that like all the time, like you can't make movies like this today because internet ruins spoilers. But my note was you couldn't make this movie today because of pace. It is
Mhm.
such a slow burn.
It is.
I
Would
was
check
trying
out.
to think. I was like, what's a movie I've seen like this recently that has this slow of a burn? And it's
Nothing came to mind.
nothing came to mind.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure there's really
There probably
artsy films.
is.
But a mainstream film that will really like take its time like this. And I wrote down the note, the line, I see dead people, which is the first time it really, really introduces this is about ghosts, happens at the 50-minute mark.
Yeah.
50 minutes and 28 seconds in
Yeah.
the movie. I'm like, we go 50 minutes, 28 seconds in the movie before we start dealing with ghosts.
Yeah. It's crazy. Anymore now, it'd be in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we talked about this with the movie Abigail, for example, like the time they took getting to the reveal.
Establish the people
that-
and the
that-
world.
And like why that one struggled to work was because in today's society, like they
Let's
couldn't
go.
even, yeah, like
Yep.
the preview couldn't even let you build like that. Like they
Right.
had to give it away. And of course, I See Dead People was a line in the Sixth Sense trailer, but for whatever reason, you could back then again, you could have a movie that takes that long to build
We
to this
just
sort of
accepted
central
it. It was
premise.
just the
Yeah,
way it was.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so I appreciated that about it, but I will be honest and say like I couldn't believe it.
It's yeah, it's just it's so not what we're used to now.
Yeah,
It's so different even for movie lovers like you and I. Like it's just different.
yeah. Um, so my next note, and jump anytime you have a note you want to throw in. I
I'm
don't
letting
want to
you.
like
No,
dominate
you're
the
fine.
conversation here. Uh, I said it's not nearly as suspenseful as I remembered.
Mhm.
Like again, like maybe it's expectation, maybe it's difference in the types of movies I've watched or something. But I remember for some reason in the theater being like, some of those movies are scenes are really tense and
Yeah.
really chilling. And
And
when I'm rewatching them, like
but
it's not, but I don't think it's what it's going for.
that's what I was gonna say. I don't think it's designed to. Like that's why I said like the movie almost unfolds like a drama.
Yeah,
It's really interesting. It was really interesting to rewatch.
yeah. Um, and then like so not nearly as suspenseful as I remembered. A lot sadder than I remembered, and I think
Uh
this
huh.
just has to do with being an adult. I think when I was
Yeah.
when I'm a teenager, like a lot of the circumstances, like
Like
I don't know, I'm like
okay.
it's more like, oh, this is interesting. Oh man, this kid sees dead people, and oh, he's
Yeah.
kind of a weirdo, and oh,
Uh
the
huh.
ghost and are interesting. And as an adult, I'm looking at it being like, this is just kind of a sad movie
It
about like
is.
this poor kid is just tortured by this ability he has, and this doctor who can't help him, and he's tortured by this past. It's a really sad movie.
It is, and you don't get. There's really no kind of like. I don't know if the word's like redemption. Like the Haley Joel Osment, the kid character, he doesn't get like, okay, I'm cured of this. I no longer like. You don't get that. You don't get that. I mean, the big climax it builds to is him and his mom in the car together.
Yeah, it's just a great scene.
Unbelievable scene. But yeah, like it doesn't give you like and then he lived the rest of his life free of this burden or anything. Like you're kind of just meant to assume this is just how it's gonna be for him.
Yeah,
It's really interesting.
yeah, I love that scene with his mom so much because
That was so good.
I was like, at that point, this goes back to a lot of the conversation we had before, where you want people to say things and real things the way that normal people would.
Would.
So I don't know, like as he says, like I'm ready to talk to you, mom, and he says like I see ghosts, and do you think I'm a freak? And you're like. You always want to be. You're so afraid the scene's gonna end. You're like, kid, just like explain. Have something ready to like prove it. And
Don't
then he does.
he does.
And you're like, thank you,
Thank you for just
movie,
getting
for
to
just
the point.
yeah,
Yes.
like that's exactly what you needed to do was tell her some crap that like you couldn't have known without the ghost to make your point.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it leaves you as an audience member, you're not sitting there going, just tell her something that there's no way. Yeah, he does it. He does it before we have to get frustrated about it. I actually watched that scene, skipped backwards, and watched it again. I watched that
That's
scene
great.
twice in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um so I'm not sure. I guess because we're going story beats, we'll talk the big spoiler. So
Sure.
guys, 25 years, like, and it's a pop culture thing. You surely know.
If you haven't seen this
surely
movie and you're
know.
going to, stop right now and go watch the movie.
Yeah, just in case, we'll still put
Just
that
in
warning.
case.
Spoiler warning. The big twist, of course, at the end is that Bruce Willis is one of the ghosts. He's
He
dead
died
all along.
when the guy shot him at the
Exactly.
beginning. Yeah.
And so it is a great twist.
It is.
I think back on it, if I remember correctly, I think it was kind of spoiled for me,
Really?
but I think I not like totally directly.
Not like this is a fact, this is what happens. Like,
Somebody said something about it, and I think I kind of didn't even know if they were just trying to like mess with
Yeah.
people, and it was like a group of people. And then I went to the movie, and I totally forgot that thing had been said. So
Mhm.
when it happened, I was like, "Oh shoot! Oh my gosh! It really like that's what happened." So it did. I was successfully like mind blown.
Yeah.
When I initially saw
Mhm.
it, and then like we talked about before, there's the rewatch, and it's one of the early movies I can remember seeing like some. I don't even know if it was
like a
like
making
making
of.
of or
Yeah.
something that they point out a lot of the little
This and
details.
this and this and
And so you
this.
rewatch and you're like, man, this was meticulously
It was really well thought out.
done.
And it
Yeah.
never I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
The
you're fine.
movie never cheats. Like that's what I really liked. It the twist holds like it holds up, and the movie's never like okay they are really. I guess what I mean to say is like they never tried to throw you off so far that they did something that you're like well now that doesn't make sense that he's dead. Like you watch it and you're like yep yep yep. Like everything checks off to me. Everything checks out.
Yeah. Fascinating that this, again, came out the same year as Fight Club. Because
Hmm.
Fight Club had a similarly big twist. Fight Club doesn't quite hold up to the same scrutiny. When you rewatch Fight Club, you're kind of like, well, how is this all happening? What's happening here?
This
And
did you think?
but
Don't you think this
but
held
this
up?
one is incredibly
It was
y-
planned out. It
you
was
get this idea that it was almost made for people to rewatch knowing it and go like, oh wow, look at this and this and this, and that's so much more impressive than I realized.
absolutely, and I think that shows the most in the scene where he thinks he's going to have an anniversary dinner with his wife.
Yes.
I thought that held up. I thought that was phenomenal because you know the twist is good when it makes you completely see the scene in a different light. So like
Yeah.
you're watching it the first time and you're just like, well, she's ticked because
He
she's
showed up
tired of
late.
this guy being wrapped up in his work. She's giving him the cold shoulder. Like you understand immediately what's happening, only you don't.
Exactly.
And then when you know the twist, you go, oh, like she wasn't mad at him. She was sad.
Mhm.
That was such a cool moment, even now to rewatch. I was like, man, Shyamalan, like job well done.
Yeah. The other scene that I thought was phenomenal is the scene where Haley Joel Osment's character comes home and Bruce Willis is sitting with his mom, but they're just sitting in silence. And Haley Joel Osment's reaction is when you watch it the first time, you think he's going, "Oh, this." You as a viewer going, "Oh, this psychologist here with my mom. Like this is weird." But then you know, he's looking out there going, "Like my mom's sitting with one of the ghosts. What do I do?"
She has no idea. And
Yeah.
you're right. That's so smart because, his reaction makes sense both ways.
Hmm.
It makes sense of like, I even read it as like he was probably like, oh man, who's this guy my mom wants me to talk to now? And then it's like you said, it's, oh my gosh, there's a ghost in here. And his reaction makes sense both ways. And that's what I mean when I say it doesn't cheat.
Yeah.
Like it makes sense not knowing the twist and it makes sense
Mhm.
knowing the twist.
Yeah. And then I'm not going to point out all examples, but there's a
Right.
very strong connection to the color red in the movie. Red always symbolizes death or dead people,
Yep.
and so the red's popping up constantly and things. Even little thing like the red doorknob he can't open in his house
Yep.
is because he's dead and he doesn't see how it's actually different than his
Exactly.
perception, which is really neat.
Yeah. So I mean, we might as well just jump in. Like we both agree, the twist is excellent, right? I mean, I don't want
Yes.
to put words in your mouth, but
Yeah.
to me, I was like, man, it just holds up so well. I don't know if I'm jumping too far ahead. I just thought this whole movie held up really, really well.
Yeah.
I really liked this movie. Rewatching it
I wondered it's one of the all-time I wish I could rewatch this
for the
for the
first
first time
time.
not knowing, especially as an adult, because watching it this time and of course knowing, so I'm looking for all the
Oh
things.
yeah.
I'm going did it really benefit from me being young and not like a clever movie watcher when this came out? Because I'm watching it now going there's so many little things I can't believe I didn't pick up on.
They-
Like the fact that Bruce Willis wears the same clothes the whole
Clothes.
movie.
I know.
The fact that he walks around a lot of time with his hand
I know.
where the gunshot wound is. And
Or
I'm
the-
like, how do I not pick up on any of these?
The fact that when Haley Joel Osment says "I see dead people," it like slowly zooms in
Yeah,
on Bruce Willis.
and he says they don't even know
They don't
they're
even know,
dead.
and it's literally showing Bruce Willis. But I almost look at it. It's like Shyamalan for being so early. I actually think he did do like one other movie, like
He
a
did
direct to video, like with
something.
Rosie O'Donnell or something. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It made no impact. This is like his big debut, but it's like the confidence he had to have had in this material.
Mhm.
To be that confident, to be like, well, he's explaining that dead people don't know they're dead. They are showing a close up of Bruce Willis's face.
Yeah,
He just reminded me almost of just an ultra confident magician
yeah,
who's concealing Shyamalan is hiding that twist in plain sight. He's not, and that's why it works now 25 years later. because it's not like, okay, they like, it's like some stupid movie like Saw. You find out the twist and you're like, so this twist in this plot was dependent on like 8 different people doing the most improbable things exactly the way that the killer wanted them to.
Right.
So it means nothing. It doesn't last, it doesn't linger, it's just stupid. I think this means so much because he's just hiding it in plain sight for you. And that is really impressive.
Yeah. Um, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit because there's one important element of the movie we didn't really touch on, and that's Bruce Willis is helping Haley Joel Osment figure out the way to not be scared of the ghosts,
This is a
to
huge
listen
thing.
to them and try to help them. And then it leads to the story of him helping the girl ghost
Man.
who was grossly like vomiting.
Dude, I knew
And
that was coming and I jumped.
yeah,
Like that's a like she just and she's under that bed. Is she under a bed?
tent. It's
Tent.
under a
Yeah,
tent,
yeah, in a tent. Yeah, and it was like, golly, that was effective.
Yeah. And so then he goes to this girl's funeral and with her like she gives him the tape to show to the
The
dad,
dad,
and
the stepmom, or is it the mom or stepmom?
some
I don't even know if
if
they
it's
even say
clear,
for sure. Yeah,
but yeah,
she's
was feeding her
keeping
something
her
poisonous
sick.
basically. Yeah. And man, it's like again, it's not a horror movie thing, but that is a very like dramatic, dark, like
It is.
little.
You feel so awful for that dad.
And then it really just leaves it like you. As a movie watcher, I'm like, man, they really just like drop this bomb and then
And like,
leave
all
it
right,
for you
we're
to be
out.
like, I guess now she's gonna get arrested. There's this
I know.
evidence she was committing a murder, but like, that's it. That's all you
it.
get. And it's like I said, it's a dark movie.
It is. But I gotta say too, just praise again to Shyamalan, like, especially for the time. That was such an original idea to like the ghosts are not the bad guys of this movie.
Right.
And I don't remember that happening before, really. Like there was maybe some goofy comedies or something
Right.
where
Casper.
like, Casper or stuff, but like a mainstream, what's presented as at the very least a thriller, if not a
Yeah.
horror movie. And the ghosts are not they're not tormenting Haley Joel Osment. They're not haunting the house. They're not doing all these things that was just the cliche for the time, and even now, I guess. Like they just wanted help. Like what a great idea. Like what a smart idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was.
It really was. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about one of the other great strengths of this movie, which is the acting.
Oh
Um,
man.
There's really not that many characters
There's
in this
not.
movie.
There's
It's
not.
a very like small, intimate story.
Once again, proving you're right. Tell small
Yep.
stories.
Toni Collette playing Haley Joel Osment's mom, I thought was great in this
She
movie.
did a great job.
I didn't know Toni Collette like as an actress when this movie came out, and so I didn't
think
even
she was
remember
somewhat
it was
unknown
hers.
at the time.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, yeah, she's much more famous now, and it wasn't like she was super young in this movie. But I was like, man, young Toni
Young Toni
Collette,
Collette,
and
yeah. She's great.
She's really good.
And it's such a hard part to like the kind of like the movie cliche would be like she's almost like so cold and distant to this kid who just wants her help and stuff. And it's writing, but it's her performance too. She balances that really well. Of like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like this frustration of like what is wrong with my kid, but also still being
Very loving and supportive.
motherly and sensitive to him. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then all culminating in that car scene, which is just phenomenal. I mean, like I said, I watched it twice.
Yeah. It was really good.
She does a great job.
Olivia Williams plays Bruce Willis's wife,
Mhm.
and very small part.
It is.
honestly, and not even a lot to do.
She doesn't
but
have
very
a lot to do,
effective.
but she hits
like,
the right beats.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you said, she has to play that scene, the anniversary, where it's like, hey, you need to look like you're being like dismissive and cold, but actually you're being sad and mournful because he's
and
dead.
people have to
and it has to
understand
look
that.
right
It has to
both
work both
ways.
ways.
So
That would not be easy.
no, that's
Yeah.
not an easy piece of direction.
No, not at all.
But she does a very good
She
job. Like,
does.
both ways you watch it.
It works.
It works.
Checks out, like I said. Yep.
But of course, what really drives this movie are the two leads.
Yep.
Bruce Willis, Haley Joel Osment. Let's talk about Bruce Willis first.
Talk.
Bruce Willis. I was looking at his IMDb, just kind of like trying to remind myself where was Bruce in,
It's a
in the
wild
greater
IMDb.
in the greater Bruce Willis IMDb, because I know I was thinking like how far are we from the Bruce Willis drop off, because
The Bruce Willis drop off was
unfortunately,
sad.
there was a drop off. We weren't like on the precipice of it in '99,
No.
but I knew, eventually it was coming. Um, I was surprised to see for a long stretch there from '88 to like '95. There was a lot of course, Die Hard movies and Look Who's Talking movies, and it's like, wow, he was really jumping back and forth between those
He
franchises
really
and doing a
was.
lot of those. And then, of course, he had um, Armageddon was a big movie.
And I know,
Uh,
Look Who's Talking Now, one of your favorites.
yeah,
Just a classic where the dog talks.
um, like we laugh, but like, have I seen that movie? I have, and do I remember it vividly? Yes, I do. So, uh, it's
They were a thing.
they were a
They
thing.
were a thing, yeah.
Um, anyways, but I think what really it comes down to when we talk about, like, there was a point where Bruce Willis, we have him,
Yeah.
the drop off is there's trying Bruce Willis, and
There's
then
phoning it in
there's
Bruce
yes,
Willis.
there's Bruce Willis who's just like, I'm over this,
Mhm.
and I'm doing this for the paycheck.
Sure.
And what everybody always says, and this isn't me, so not me saying something new, is Bruce Willis when he's trying is
It's
a really
really
talented
good.
actor.
Yeah.
And it's just good, like, again, going back to this old Bruce Willis material, because we've been in the Bruce Willis phoning it in stretch for
Mhm.
a long time. It's such a good reminder of, like,
Yeah.
yeah, this guy, and
He was so good in this movie.
he's been so typecast out. Obviously, everybody thinks like, yeah, Bruce Willis became this huge action star when he did Die Hard,
Mhm.
but he really didn't become like a parody of that until like the
It was
2010s.
yeah, it's quite a ways down the road.
Like Liam
Well,
Neeson, and granted they were at different points in their life and career.
yeah.
Liam Neeson did Taken, and then we kind of laugh and joke about how he just became a parody of the Taken action
Yeah.
star for the next, still kind of dealing with
Still
that.
doing it, yeah.
Whereas Willis, he did a lot of action movies, but he was trying to still, you could tell he was trying to diversify. And this one, between this and Unbreakable, were like two really departures from what we
Big time.
typically saw
Mhm.
Willis do. And uh, he has a great ability to do what we talked about. What we talked about with some other actors is to do very little, be very still, but still be
Con-
very effective and convey a whole lot.
Yes.
And so when I was watching it, one of the things I was thinking of is like, man, if they made The Sixth Sense today, like what actor could
Who
pull
could do
this
it?
off?
I don't know.
And the funny thing is, I don't even know if this is the right choice. But the first thing that came to my mind was probably because we just talked about him doing this was
Gosling?
Ryan Gosling, because the way he's quiet in like
Mhm.
Blade Runner 2049 or
Yep.
Drive. And then I thought was like, well, man, Gosling's Gosling, and he doesn't have the like dad look
Mhm.
of Bruce Willis. I looked it up. Bruce Willis was 44 years old the year this movie came out.
Yeah.
Ryan Gosling, 44
44?
years old right now. Ryan Gosling right now is the same age as Bruce Willis in this movie, and that blew my mind.
That's
If you showed
crazy.
somebody a clip from The Fall Guy and a clip from
Sixth
Sixth
Sense.
said which person is older, trick question, they're the same age. Nobody would.
No,
would get
99
that.
out of 100 people would
Yeah.
guess Willis.
But Bruce Willis is one of those guys who's just always looked older than he is, I
He
guess,
is.
because he looks pretty much the same age in Die Hard as he does
Is in
in
Sixth
Sixth
Sense, and it's
so,
what, 11 years difference?
yeah,
He's so good in this movie.
yeah.
So my biggest thing was like, I just couldn't believe how easily you just accept him. Like, this is a child psychologist.
Mhm.
Like a year before he did this movie, he was Armageddon, Bruce Willis.
Mhm.
Like ridiculous, flying to the moon, and for him to do Armageddon and then 1 year later be in The Sixth Sense, that's range.
Mhm.
I'm telling you. And it's amazing. It was amazing to me just how, like you said, that calmness, and even just the clothes that they picked for him, whether it was a Shyamalan thing or what. Like, you buy him as just like this quiet guy in a sweater and like carrying his coat around with him. Like, he pulled that off so well. And I just thought his quietness, his restraint was unbelievable in this movie. Like, I really, kudos to Bruce Willis. Like, he did a phenomenal job in this movie.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The quietness, the strength. There's a warmth to him, though.
Yeah.
Of being like that you would have to have as a child psychologist, you would think. So, like, just contrasting
pulls
it
it off.
with Unbreakable, which I think is also great
I
in
do too.
Unbreakable. I
I
just
like
heard a thing
Unbreakable.
today that Tarantino said he thought it was Bruce Willis's finest acting job
Really?
he ever did was in Unbreakable, which is
Interesting.
pretty neat because he's been in a Tarantino movie.
Yes.
But that one by design, he's a little more like quiet, still, and kind of cold.
Yeah.
And in this one, he has that like kind of warmth to
Mhm.
him. Again, which is ironic because he's the dead person
He
in
is.
this movie.
But you totally buy it. Like he's just so good and so convincing in this movie.
Yeah. Can we talk about the one thing that's a little distracting, but I thought totally necessary? The hair.
Yeah.
Like I was sitting there going, like it would have been weird if he was shaved head, which is typically associated with action. Bruce Willis.
I know.
He needed the hair,
needed
but at
it.
the same time, I kept looking at the hair.
It's like a
It's
distraction.
very weird.
It is.
Bruce Willis with the hair, and I'm like, what is?
It is a
What
little bit
percentage of this is his?
It fits. It fits the character.
Yes.
Like yeah, you're right
100%.
though, for sure.
So I threw this idea out to you earlier today.
Mhm.
Just that in my notes, I couldn't help but do it. When I was watching this and going like, Bruce Willis is really good.
Yeah.
I made my Mount Rushmore of Bruce Willis movies,
As did I.
and some of these are probably I would say 2 of these are probably pretty common picks. 2 of them probably a little more off the beaten
Yeah.
path, though. So the first one is the one everyone's gonna have. Die Hard.
You can't not
Die
have
Hard's
it.
got to be on the Mount Rushmore.
It has to be.
And not just because it's a great movie, because it's a great Bruce Willis performance.
He's great.
He set a whole new archetype for action
I mean,
heroes.
it changed things in a lot of ways.
It would, yeah, it's a no brainer.
It's legendary for a reason.
Yeah. Then I put The Sixth Sense on there.
Same.
I think it belongs on
Oh, absolutely.
the Willis Mount Rushmore.
Yep.
And this is where so one qualifier. I only went with one Die Hard.
Same.
I probably could have done
yeah,
maybe
like Die
another
Hard
one.
1, 2, and 3
Yeah,
could all be on
but I
there.
decided Die Hard 1 just kind of covered that base.
covers it.
And so this is where I feel like you're probably gonna get a little more disparate answers. But my next one is 12 Monkeys.
Yeah.
I really like 12 Monkeys. It's a
good
weird movie,
It's weird.
but I really enjoy that movie.
Willis is really good in that movie.
And I thought, yeah, exactly. I thought Willis was really good. And then my fourth pick, which is more of a pick from my heart, The Whole Nine Yards. It's funny, Bruce Willis leaning into like the sort of archetype that he had become. And I really enjoy that movie. So that's my Willis Mount Rushmore. So I imagine we probably differed on the last 2.
We're different on the last 2.
So I'm very curious. I bet I know one of yours.
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction.
It is. Willis is just awesome in that movie. He gets to wield a sword. He's a boxer. Like he throws a fight. It's just a really interesting character. And it was just, Tarantino's gift of casting where you're just like, Bruce Willis just belongs in this movie. So I won't go on and on about that. My last one, I also picked with my heart. It's just a movie I grew up watching, and it's awesome, and that's The Last Boy Scout.
Okay.
Where he's basically just playing like even more down on his luck John McClane. But it's a wild movie. It was written by Shane Black, and it is LA, drugs, guns, excess, explosions, ridiculousness. It's kind of got the famous scene where Willis is like, if you touch me again, I'll kill you. The guy, do you remember that? Like the guy keeps giving him the cigarette, and then he punches him, and Willis is like, touch me again, I'll kill you. And he does. And it's just legendary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple movies I didn't pick, I just wanted to give a shout out to. As cheesy as it is, I do put Armageddon on like the consider because it's one of those really cheesy, dumb, like I have fun with it. Granted, another one I probably haven't watched in 20 years.
Same. Yeah.
But Unbreakable.
Yep.
But when I went Sixth Sense, I was like,
I did the same thing. I felt like
Unbreakable.
because I had Sixth Sense, I didn't need Unbreakable.
And then 2 movies he did in back-to-back years that were not very popular movies, but I actually really enjoyed was Hostage, in which he plays. Yeah. It's kind of the opposite of a Die Hard situation. He's a negotiator outside of the.
It's a pretty good movie.
And then Lucky Number 11.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of a fun, twisty. Yep. I don't know what you would call it, noir movie.
Noir, I'd say, yeah.
So yeah.
Willis had a wild IMDb.
He does.
He had, a lot of awesome movies, and even before he kind of went off into the direct-to-video stuff, definitely some stinkers. Your Hudson Hawks and your stuff like that. But he's definitely an interesting actor, and I was kind of like you. I thought about some of those other ones. 12 Monkeys definitely considered for me. Armageddon. I've lost the name of it. With Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I've completely
Looper.
Thank you.
That's another one I looked at and I forgot to even write it down. But I did think about it. And then I actually enjoy. They would never make like the Rushmore, the Red movies, Red 1 and 2, where
Yeah,
he's an
yeah.
older
Yeah,
spy. Those are just kind of fun
like,
throwaway movies. John Malkovich is just
is
a lot of fun in
he
them.
is. Sin City, I thought Willis was good in Sin
Yeah,
City. He's like the old grizzled
yeah,
cop. Like, he's good in that.
yeah.
I don't really think of him as someone like bad performances. Like, he probably did. Like, I mean, he did like I remember he did a really generic movie where he's like a um, boat cop, like Striking Distance in the '90s, and
Mm,
that's kind of phoning
yeah.
it in Willis. But
There's the notorious
Hudson Hawk,
cop out that
Cop
he
Out.
did
That's
with Kevin Smith, because Kevin Smith has been very like, he goes around and he talks a lot about how he was so psyched to work with Bruce Willis, and Bruce Willis hated him and
yeah.
hated the movie, and it was just very difficult. And
I don't like Kevin Smith at all. I
yeah,
don't
well,
like
that
his
movie was
movies.
not good.
That movie's bad. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I guess he did. He was in some bad movies. Hudson Hawk is
yeah.
kind of a legendarily
He's
bad
just one of
movie.
those guys that you can tell when he's like, this isn't working, or I don't think this is good.
Hmm.
He's not one of those guys who's like, well, let's just make the most of it.
He's like,
Yeah,
this
but
is bad.
when he's in on the
When-
project,
yeah, when he's
he
in,
believes
he's
in
all in. It
Yeah,
seems like, yeah. But again, just A+ performance from him in this movie.
absolutely.
It wouldn't even have bothered me to, if he would have gotten an Oscar nomination.
Right.
I would have been like, yeah, sounds good to me. I'm not saying he should have won, but he's great,
Yeah. The other performance, which did get an Oscar nomination,
deservedly so.
Haley Joel Osment, which will tell you something. Like, I'm not trying to undo what we were saying about Bruce Willis, because he was really good. Haley Joel Osment was just so good that he stole the show.
He
this.
did.
Like, of course, the show were your part. Bruce Willis had to be very still, and
He
Haley
did.
Joel Osment got to have all the reactions.
He
But
did.
man, I don't know how old he actually was filming this movie. He was supposed to be 9 in the movie and
I'd
looks
say
9.
he has to be around that age.
Unreal acting performance.
It's stunning. Like, it's stunning. And I knew that was like one of the narratives coming out of that movie was how good he was. But it's like anything, when you rewatch it 20 years later, you're kind of watching it with a little bit of a critical eye. There's just a little bit of like, was he really this good, or was it
Yeah.
just kind of like,
Is it good for a 9-year?
or is it just good? No, it is a legitimately good performance. Like, kudos to you, Haley Joel Osment, because you are phenomenal in this
Yeah.
movie.
And that led me to the note, all-time child acting performance by Haley Joel Osment, which led me to going,
Mount
I need to make
Rushmore.
my Mount Rushmore
Yeah.
of what are the all-time
Yeah.
child acting performances. And at first I wrote down a couple and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have a hard time finding a fourth. And then as I started like looking into it more, I was like,
There was kind of
There's a
more than
ton
I
of options.
thought.
and honestly, one thing I did to narrow it down is, when you say child actor, there can be some debate about like, what does that mean? Everybody up to like 18 when they become an
Yeah.
adult? And I was like, no, I think it really, for me, I'm thinking like not even a teenager yet.
I thought
So
like
actual
12 and
child,
under was kind of how I looked
exactly.
at it. Yeah.
So this is what I wrote as my Mount Rushmore.
Okay. I can't wait to hear this.
And there's, even as I was doing it, there's several that I'm like, man, maybe I should switch it around. I feel pretty good about, I actually feel really good about 3 of them. And then the fourth one, it's not that I don't feel good about it, but just,
Sure.
so the first one, Haley Joel Osment from The
Yeah.
Sixth Sense, of course. It's like Bruce Willis's Die Hard. Like, it's got to be.
It's got to be.
The second one I wrote down was Jacob Tremblay from Room.
Yeah.
Which was, I mean, when I was watching it, I remember getting the sensation of like, this is giving me Haley Joel Osment vibes. Like, this kid
Mhm.
is so good.
He's so good.
And I could see him getting like nominated for.
Real
for
fun,
it.
uplifting movie, too. Just a good time.
Yeah.
No, it's a really good movie, but it's a tough
It's got
watch.
one of the most intense sequences I've ever seen in
Yeah.
a movie. Like a 5-minute stretch where I don't think I
yeah, you
took a breath.
don't move. Yeah.
Freddie Highmore in Finding Neverland.
Finding Neverland, yeah.
He was really good in
He
that.
is really good.
And then this last one, I think you'll appreciate. Very few other people in the world would appreciate. And we've talked about this before. Danielle Harris in Halloween 4 and 5.
Nice job. Nice.
I was like, I
No,
just could not put it.
she's
because,
really good.
because ever since I've seen that, when I think about like great child performances, she comes to mind. I'm
excellent.
like, man, that girl was so good.
She
in
is
that-
so
in
good.
these cheesy Halloween movies.
Job well done. I'm proud
Yeah.
of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I had her written down. I didn't put her on my Mount Rushmore
Okay.
though, because I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try and. So I went Haley Joel Osment for The Sixth Sense. I went way back in time. I went Henry Thomas in E.T.
Yeah.
I did Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone.
I made my list and then I Googled some and I
was
saw
like-
his name and I go, I can't believe I didn't even think.
I was
of
just
him.
thinking, I was like, you know what, that kid has to carry that. I mean, maybe not. I mean, Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern definitely do their part,
Yeah.
but I mean, that is his movie.
Yeah.
And it was a hugely successful movie that people still like to this day. And then my last one, This might be cutting it really close on the age. I went River Phoenix and Stand By Me.
That was another
And
one.
I think he'd probably be about. Is he supposed to be what, 11 or 12? I think
he fits.
he's supposed to be 10 to 12. I think.
Yeah.
And it's right there on the cusp. But Stand By Me is a movie I really like, and I actually rewatched quite a bit. And man, he's good in that movie. He is really, really good.
Yeah, I wrote down. I just want to give a couple of the alternates that I thought of.
Same. I
They're
want to
very
do the
close.
same.
Abigail Breslin and Little Miss
Little
Sunshine.
had it.
Really great. Dakota Fanning and War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
When I looked it up, a lot of lists had her for the movie I Am
She's-
Sam, but
yeah.
War of the Worlds is the one that I always thought of.
Yeah,
Like
and she's
that
really little in that movie.
Yeah.
And she's with Cruz the whole time. And
yeah. Lindsay Lohan in The Parent Trap.
Yeah.
Which
double
it's-
duty.
Yeah, Lindsay Lohan. She's kind of become like a joke,
joke.
now, but like
She was legitimately good.
legitimately like a phenom because of how
Yes.
good she was in that movie.
Mhm.
McKenna Grace in the movie Gifted.
Yeah.
And then the last one I wrote was Roman Davis and Jojo Rabbit.
Oh yeah,
Who
I
was the
I
lead
forgot about
kid.
that one.
I would have forgotten about it too
Yeah,
if
darn
I wasn't kind of scrolling through my own movies and being like,
Mhm.
am I missing any obvious ones? And I hit that one. I was like, oh, this kid was
He's really good, and so is the girl in Jojo
Yeah.
Rabbit. I
Yeah,
don't
and
remember her
she
name.
has gone on to do
Yeah,
Thomason McKenzie or something like that is
something
her
like
name.
that. Yeah, you're right.
And
And she's
she's been in a few things like Last Night in Soho,
Yep.
which was a movie that came out a couple years ago. She was good in that.
Yep.
And
I threw out Abigail Breslin in Little Miss Sunshine. I had Linda Blair in The Exorcist. I'm a fan of that movie. I had Natalie Portman in The Professional.
it's a good
It's
call.
a movie I've always liked.
Yeah.
And this might be a weird one, and I even when I was writing it, but I thought the kids in Jurassic Park did a really good job.
Yeah.
The brother sister duo, Tim and Lex.
Yeah.
I think they did a really good job in a really it was a really fun and enjoyable movie.
Yeah. And that the boy has gone on to like have sort of a that guy career. He's in The Social Network a
Yep.
little bit. He was in Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yep.
He was the
I
bass
know
player
he
in that.
pops up
You-
sometimes.
and every time you see him, you're kind of like, he looks really familiar. Oh, he's the kid
from Jurassic,
Park.
And shout out to Danielle Harris, Halloween 4 and 5. She's awesome in those movies. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are good kid performances. Drew Barrymore is really good in E.T. That one just popped into my head right now. Yeah. But Haley Joel Osment, it may be the GOAT.
Yeah,
It may be the GOAT performance.
I think it probably is.
And the thing is too, like, he in some ways has similar, like, obviously, like you said, it's the flashier part. Willis is supposed to kind of just be this calm, but Haley Joel Osment matches that sometimes in a way. Like when they go together to the girl's funeral and stuff, like he's really like he's not bursting into the room like guess what like he's got to kind of have that calmness about him too in that scene. And then honestly the movie probably just doesn't land quite like it did if he doesn't deliver the I see dead people, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
That is such an important scene and an important line in that movie and in the marketing of that movie, which by the way, that was the second highest grossing movie of the year. Did you see that in your research?
I should have.
The only movie that outgrossed The Sixth Sense in 1999 was Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. That is really impressive.
Yeah. So, and I can give the numbers here because I did actually note the numbers. It was a $40 million budget.
Yeah.
Worldwide made $672 million.
That's crazy.
It's a pretty good return on investment.
It was. So I read this today, just like 10 minutes before I walked over here. Number one at the box office for 5 straight weeks. You just don't get that anymore.
I mean, it was a huge word of
So
mouth.
when you said it was a phenomenon and all these things, that is the truth. It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe, like I said, probably the GOAT performance by Haley Joel Osment.
Yeah. I mean, it goes down to like that. He had to strike the right tone between like, he's a very smart 9-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
but he is a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
And like a very small example of that is great moment where he's eating breakfast and the mom steps out of the room, and when she turns back into the room, all the like cabinets are open and he's just sitting there kind of like,
Yeah.
I'll shoot. She's like, were you looking for something? And he's like, you can tell he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't want to freak his mom out. So he just goes, Pop-Tarts. Like,
And he pulls it off.
yeah.
Like,
She's yeah, you should definitely think it's me because the alternative is to freak you out until you know there's a ghost in here.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing all this. So,
I mean, the ultimate compliment is that it's not just a good kid actor. It's like he's really good for a 9-year-old. Straight 9-year-old, it's just a good performance. And that's the best compliment you can give to a kid performance.
absolutely.
Like, doesn't at 9, 20, 30, I don't care. unbelievable performance. He is obviously so, his performance is so important to that movie,
Yeah.
which I know is stating the obvious, but if that performance doesn't work, the movie doesn't work, and we're not talking about
If
it
you
right
get
now.
your replacement level kid actor performance, the movie is a
It's
B instead
yeah,
of an A
yep,
plus.
absolutely.
So we've spent a lot of time
We
on Sixth
have.
Sense, and I knew this is why I want to talk about it first because I knew we'd talk
There's a lot to
more
know.
about
Yeah,
this. I do want to talk a little bit about M. Night Shyamalan because we
absolutely.
haven't said as much about him. Like I said, what an incredible, more or less debut feature.
Yeah,
He hit this one in 1999, Unbreakable in 2000, Signs in 2002. Signs is actually my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie.
agreed.
And it's like that was a 1, 2, 3 punch that was unreal.
I'm gonna tell you, at the time, in the moment, I was 1,000%, and I just spit everywhere. I was 1,000% in on Shyamalan, and after Signs,
yeah.
I was like, "This is my guy."
I remember distinctly, there was a magazine cover, and I can't remember which magazine. It was one big
Like the
entertainment
Premiere,
or
Empire, or
something.
Entertainment Weekly,
And it was a picture of M. Night Shyamalan, and it said the next Spielberg ? And it was like,
yeah,
at the time, not a ridiculous headline.
it
People were
wasn't.
going like, I think this might be
Oh,
our
absolutely.
next Spielberg.
Because I thought, I like Sixth Sense, I like Unbreakable, I love Signs.
Mhm.
Boom, boom, boom. He came out of the gate, and I was like, I don't care what his next movie is, I'm all in. Unfortunately, his next movie was The Village.
Yeah. And The Village, yeah, you're right. It was the first like kink in the armor, like
But it was like, but I'm still
it's
with this guy.
yeah.
And then he did Lady in the Water.
Lady in the Water.
One of the
yeah,
worst movies I've ever seen in my life.
he did that, and then you say that, then he did The Happening, The Last Airbender, and After Earth.
That is a terrible run of movies.
After an all-time like out of the gate 1,
Crash
2, 3,
and burn.
he did The Village, which
It's
in hindsight was the best of the next
by,
5 I listed.
By far.
Lady in the Water is another step down, and then it's just like The Happening, Last Airbender, and After Earth are as bad as those first 3 were good.
I definitely remember, like, by the time After Earth came out, it was almost like Shyamalan was the butt of the joke.
It was so bad that the advertising did not even mention he was part of the movie because they thought that would hurt the movie more than help it.
Yeah. It's sad. But I will say he's kind of back.
So, yes, then in 2015, that was 2013, he did After Earth. And at that point, people were like, his career's
It's
dead.
done. Yeah.
In 2015, he did a movie called The Visit, which I actually didn't see, but I remember hearing
It's
good
not
things.
bad. I remember watching that and it was like, okay, we're that wasn't a home run, but we're at least back on track.
Yeah. And I think if anything, what people kind of thought after those last several ones were he was getting really big with his movies. Obviously, The Last Airbender is this big fantasy.
Man,
it's a
terrible movie.
It's a disaster, but
yeah,
it was a ambitious undertaking.
The smartest thing he did was scale it all back.
After Earth was another ambitious, world building, and so yeah, when he did The Visit, it was returned to like a very small movie,
small scale, small budget.
Then he did the movie Split in 2016, and Split was really the movie that announced his comeback.
It made a lot of money,
and was the big twist on that one was that it took place in the Unbreakable universe.
Yeah.
Great performance from James McAvoy.
He's so good in that movie.
Very impressed with him on that one.
Yep.
He went 3 years without making another movie until he made Glass, which was the culmination of one. And I'm gonna be honest, I still haven't seen it. I don't know why.
I wanted to like it, but
that's kind of what I got.
It wasn't an embarrassment.
Yeah.
It wasn't, The Happening.
Yeah. Then 2021 he did Old, which was
it's fine.
It's a fine little throwaway movie.
It's creepy and weird and
And last year he did Knock at the Cabin, which
I honestly
was
like
well
that
received,
a lot.
and I thought it was pretty good. And this year he's got a movie coming out called Trap.
It looks kind of
good. Good. It's got it's
Josh Hartnett
in it.
Yeah.
So
now his daughter's making movies.
His daughter is making movies. Yeah.
So I know we've gone long already, but it's like the Rewatchables does unanswerable questions. The all-time unanswerable question is like, what happened there in the middle? How was he like Signs, Unbreakable and Sixth Sense? Like, man, for what those movies are, nailed it. Like every decision was the right decision, and then those other especially like Lady in the Water to After Earth, like every single decision was the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Like, it's
It,
one of the strangest things. Like, what happened to this guy?
it really, I mean, I hate to play, psychiatrist from the couch, but it really felt like the guy who just had so
Too
much
much
success early,
success.
it all went to his head, and he just started to think he couldn't make a bad decision. And
Hmm.
then, like, The Village, I still maintain, is actually like
It's not bad.
3/4 of a really good movie.
Hmm.
It just falls apart in the end. And then,
It's like Adrian Brody was on a mission to single-handedly ruin that
oh
movie.
my gosh, yeah. Lady in the Water is where it really becomes like this dude just thinks any idea he has
It's
is going to
good.
work because it had up to that point. He also was giving himself increasingly bigger and more important roles in the movies. And by Lady in the Water, he's like a very central character,
dude,
and he's not a good actor.
You're not a good actor, man.
And so, yeah, it's like
It's
and then the wheels are kind of coming off, and I think he was trying to he just started trying too hard, and it starts to be a guy who like gets the yips and it can't find himself, and
I
it's like
know.
he just had to like fall apart before
It-
he could rebuild himself.
I know. I was trying to compare. As I think is like, is it the equivalent of like a professional athlete just being in an all-time slump?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, like dropping out of the pros and having to work your way through the minor leagues
To
again or
get
something.
back, I know
Yeah.
it's crazy,
But I mean, you see careers with ups and downs. You rarely ever see one that's as cleanly like highs, lows,
And then
back
we're
up.
back
Like
up,
it's
yeah.
like he's either always on the one or the other. It's not he doesn't jump back and forth
No.
really.
And I'll say this though: those first three movies, Sixth Sense, Unbreakable Signs, I still to this day like them all so much. I'm still rooting for Shyamalan.
Yeah.
Like he's held me over since what was Signs 2002.
Mm-hmm.
2002, and I'm still rooting. Like I want Trap that's coming out this summer to be a good movie
Yeah.
because I like those first three movies so much that I just want. I'm still in on Shyamalan.
And I think the world's with you, and I think that's why after all those bombs that he had in a row, people kept saying, "Let's keep giving this guy a chance," because
Mhm.
we aren't ready to think that the brilliance is just all gone
Yeah.
all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So fascinating career, but man, just I know we've made this point clear. I don't want to be repetitive, but I thought Sixth Sense completely held up. Every bit of praise and acclaim, and this movie got a lot of Oscar nominations and made a ton of money. I think it's all deserved.
Yeah.
All deserved, and it's 100% a Shyamalan movie. He wrote it, he directed it. It's all him, and unbelievable job from him. Unbelievable. Like kudos to him.
Yeah. So, Sixth Sense, it holds up.
It
It's a real
holds up.
success.
Just go into it. You have to go into it, like you said, the pacing. This is not a boom, 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 boom. Like, this is a slow, thoughtful, considered movie. But it makes it so much more effective when you build up to those last couple of big moments. The scene between Osmond and his mom, and then the big reveal.
Yeah,
So give it a shot.
for sure.
And give Shyamalan's early movies a shot. Watch Sixth Sense, watch Unbreakable, and watch Signs.
Yes.
Those are all three really good movies.
Yes. Now for a really hard pivot out of the world of like very high class suspense, slow burn filmmaking to Office Space.
Office Space, yeah.
Uh,
From the guy who created Beavis and Butthead.
From the guy who created Beavis and Butthead. Mike Judge is the writer and director. Much like Sixth Sense is entirely a Shyamalan movie, this is
is a Mike
entirely a
Judge
Mike
movie.
Judge movie. And Mike Judge has a very distinct kind of like
Humor.
humor.
Absolutely.
But I'll actually say this. He is also a guy who will like a slow pace,
Mhm.
which is funny to say. Like you would think of somebody who made like Beavis and Butthead. I think the thought is like that's a very like manic energy.
Yeah.
But he also made like King of the Hill, which is one of the like slowest,
Slow, yep,
like
just humor in the mundane.
very mundane humor.
Mm.
That's the perfect way to put it. Humor in the mundane. And this movie is that same way. It is like the humor in the mundane. And I think maybe one of the reasons why this movie in theaters was a box office failure.
Big time.
It was a $10 million budget. It grossed worldwide 10.8.
It's rough. But the story of this movie became a phenomenon. This is the first time I ever remember hearing about a movie that became a phenomenon after its theatrical release.
Absolutely. Like DVD sales made it a profitable movie.
Yeah.
And then
It's probably still making money to this day.
Yeah. One of my notes that I wrote while watching this is I said, this was a perfect for cable TV edit movie.
Yeah.
It's an R-rated movie, but nothing that makes it R when taken out for cable editing
Is it affecting
takes
the movie?
away
Mhm.
the quality or enjoyment of the movie.
Mhm.
Like there's some language, a couple of sexual references. That's what makes it R. And when you take those out,
Still,
it's the same movie
it is.
basically. And
It
so
is.
like it it was perfect for cable
And that's what
syndication.
happened.
And that's I mean like I think for me and most people I know, like that's where you grow to like love this movie is
I sure didn't see this in the
come
theater.
across it on cable and it's one of those ones you watch in chunks.
Yep.
And you know, oh, this scene's coming up or oh, this part's funny and it
I bet
grows
you.
on you.
I bet you there's a lot of people that have never seen this movie from start to finish.
I bet you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This movie got an 81% from the critics, which surprised me, but 93% from audience.
Yeah.
Doesn't
People
surprise
like
me.
this movie.
People
Love
like
this movie.
Again, it goes back to like it's one of those movies. Yeah, the problem was people not seeing it, not people seeing it and not liking
Yeah.
it. But this was my actual first note I wrote, which was a ways into the movie. I just wrote, why is this movie so likable? What is it about the movie that like makes it? And I wrote some guesses. Like, is it the real life accuracy? Is it that there's
That's
so
what it
many
is to
little
me.
jokes in the movie from the very beginning where they're stuck in traffic and just like the main character Peter shifting lanes, and every time he shifts lanes, the other lane he was in starts moving, and just the frustration of that. It's like everyone can relate to that scenario.
I think that's 100% why this movie works, because it finds humor in situations we can all understand.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of amazing to think no one had ever made an Office comedy before.
Right.
It really is, because it's like, now that we know Office Space exists, like that is just the perfect canvas to paint on.
Yeah.
And the cubicles and the mundane and the copy machine that won't work. It's like, even if you haven't been in that situation, you totally understand what they're, you understand their frustrations.
Yeah. I think it was on The Big Picture where they posed the question like, did Office Space scare away an entire generation of people from like office jobs?
Yeah.
I'm like, I think it kind of was this like really big like cultural warning to people like, yeah, like we all hate working like this.
Yeah.
And not to say people don't still work in jobs, cubicles, and it's
Right.
not important and all of that, and like you can't have a fulfilling life in those jobs. But it just was, I think, for something that was just lampooning a certain type of job, did it actually so effectively that people are like, yeah, that type of job looks miserable.
Yeah. And that's that. So going back and watching this movie, that I actually kind of had the same opinion of the movie now that I did watching it back in the day, where I think the movie is by far at its best and its funniest when you're just in the office dealing with the broken copier, the boss who's having you file these reports and you really don't even know why you're filing them. Yeah. That is what works in this movie.
Gary Cole,
oh my gosh,
somehow being hilarious while doing basically always
doing
just
nothing.
Be like, I'm just gonna need you to go. Like, that's another thing I wrote. Is like the subtle humor really grows on you because the first time you watch it, if you're with your friends who haven't seen it and you're like, watch this, this boss is so funny, and he comes in just and they'd be like, what? Why is that so funny? Yeah. But then as you like kind of sit with it after a while, you're like, it's so funny because that's what an obnoxious boss is like. Yep. They don't do anything like big and grand. They just have these stupid,
just annoying
speech patterns.
Ways
and you hear
about
them, you're just like, ugh, yeah, he's the worst.
And that's just where the movie shines. Or like, I loved it at the time. I love it now. I can't tell you how much enjoyment I get out of the guy being named Michael Bolton.
That's such a good joke.
People thinking that's just the funniest thing. And the actor's name escapes me right now. Michael Bolton, the guy who plays Michael Bolton.
I've got it.
What is his name? And how did he not become a huge star? How did he not become a huge star? He is so funny in this movie.
So funny.
Yeah. I love when it's during like one of the, I think when they're like exchanging the disc, and that lady's like, it's slow motion, but she says, "Hi, Michael Bolton," and he just has the most defeated look on his face.
He does.
That right there was the single funniest moment of that movie for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole scene is great because they do like the slow motion. It's like they in their mind, you can tell they're like, we are like super spies, espionage, and then like they get done, they're like, that was actually really easy.
Yeah.
Like, it just...
that is where that movie shines, and where it didn't work for me at the time, and it didn't work now, is when it gets just too bogged down in the plot.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if this is a good time. If this is a hot take. I don't like Jennifer Aniston, the actress.
Yeah.
She just does nothing, brings nothing to the table to me. So when you get bogged down in like well, she slept with Lumberg and stuff, I don't care.
Yeah.
And the thing that, a lot of people took out of this movie was how funny the Milton character is. It's not funny to me.
No.
And I'm not trying to sound like a snob or like I'm up here and everybody else's humor is down here. That's just not funny to me. Those three guys just in that office and their frustration and the two Bobs.
I was about to say the two
Good
Bobs
grief.
are.
How in the world did
Yeah.
they not get their own spin-off movie?
I would have watched a spinoff of them just going around being consultants at different
Oh
firms.
my gosh.
I wrote down the quotability of this movie, and I was like, I do think there's a lot of great quotes in this movie, but honestly, there's not a lot of great quotes that like I use just kind of
No.
regularly. And the two that I use are from the Bobs. The one is "What would you say you do here?" which they asked the one guy who doesn't really do anything there.
No.
That's a quote I'll use all the time,
Sure.
especially with like students.
Yeah.
When they don't do anywhere. Like, what would you say you do here? And the other one is, I celebrate his entire catalog.
My favorite line of the movie. He is
I don't know
so,
why. I don't know why that
I
wording.
know that is
so
literally my
perfect,
favorite line of the movie.
But I celebrate his entire catalog talking about Michael Bolton.
And he's like a giddy schoolgirl in that moment. It is so funny. It's so unbelievable. And I love it when he goes, "There's a straight shooter with upper management written all over him."
Yeah.
Those guys are so unbelievably good in that movie.
And also, the other Bob has the great line of when they're talking about who they're going to fire. They're going to fire Michael Bolton.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's worthless. And then Samir Naga
Not gonna work here
not gonna
anymore.
work here anymore. That is
Oh my gosh.
a great
It is.
line. Yeah, the Bobs definitely should have had their own spinoff.
I'm honestly surprised it didn't happen, or they didn't try and pitch like maybe they did, like a TV show, or because my judge, he had to have had some pull. I mean,
Yeah.
Beavis and Butthead was like a cultural thing.
Yeah, as was King of the Hill.
It definitely was. So
Let's talk a little bit about Mike Judge.
Sure.
Because, again, very like distinct style of humor.
definitely.
He's done a lot of TV. So he did Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill, and then Office Space. I think that's the correct order of how they came out.
That seems
I think King of the
right,
Hill came out. He's only done a few movies since this. He did Idiocracy in 2006, which has one of the all-time great like premises and like
it just doesn't
kind of
quite.
the movie itself
Doesn't
isn't
quite all
that
come
fun
together.
to watch, but I'll always say like the 5-minute clip on YouTube of them explaining how the world got dumb.
It is.
It's hilarious.
It's really funny. Yeah.
He did the movie called Extract in 2009, which I'd actually never watched. It's got I think Jason Bateman in
I
it.
think you're right. Yeah.
And then he did a show called Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley is described by a lot of people as like office space for modern times.
Yeah.
And it does obviously it's a little different. It's but it's an HBO show that I actually watched all the way through and thought was really fun and funny. But I still think probably Office Space is probably like the crowning jewel.
It's kind of where it just all came together for him.
Yeah, or at least had the broadest target demographic of people who could appreciate it.
Yeah.
For sure.
But kind of one of those deals where, like, even though it didn't hit in theaters, that movie hit so big afterwards, it unfortunately did kind of feel like he didn't have anywhere to go but, a little bit down.
Yeah.
And
But he seems like a guy who never wanted to be like super famous.
Yeah.
Didn't seem like a typical Hollywood type.
no,
Seemed like I have no problem like just kind of retreating from the spotlight for a long time because he never really basked in the spotlight.
no. And never really tried to change his style of humor to fit a bigger audience. It seemed like to me, it just felt like this is what I think is funny, and this is what I'm going to do.
And that's exactly. With Office Space, you really get the sense that he is, everything he's doing, he's like, I just think this is.
I think this is funny. Like,
really funny. He strikes me as the type of guy like when you're hanging out with him, like it takes you a little while to realize how funny he is because he's like really dry since he probably delivers things with a straight face.
Yeah.
Of course, he is in the movie. He plays Jennifer Aniston's boss,
And he's funny.
and like just really hamming it up and being
Really
a
hamming it
goofy
up.
guy.
But that stuff is. But again, that was it's very 1990. But like the whole idea of like the TGI Fridays and stuff like that was kind of relatable.
I read in the trivia that I think it was actually TGI Fridays. I think that they were parodying with that they stopped making their employees wear that stuff after this movie because it was like became such a big joke.
But I think that's like we've talked about it before. Like comedy is probably my least favorite genre of movie. But if you're gonna do one, I like I think what I like is when comedy takes something or ideas or something that are relatable and just kind of exaggerates and expands them a little bit. You know,
Mm.
and it doesn't go like full, just over the top ridiculous. Like I said, like to me, by far the best parts of this movie are just the little mundane things in the office. That's
Yeah.
where this movie just shines.
Yeah. And I do think it shines in large part because the main characters are not big stars.
No,
They just seem like everyday
they
guys.
they
I mean,
legitimately just seem like office workers, and they have just the really, I don't know what the right word is. They're just a really charming, like the three of them together. They're just really funny together.
just a good
Just
dynamic
like
in
some
there.
dudes hanging out, and yeah,
And like Ron Livingston as the leading man, I don't think Ron Livingston's bad, but just he's he was so right for this
he
part.
was perfect.
And every time I've seen him in anything since then, it's always like, hey, it's the guy from Office Space.
That's right. He's yeah, yeah. He's great.
Yeah, and like I mean, maybe Ron Livingston had greater dreams for his own career than that, but that's a great thing for a lot of people to be so recognizable from such a beloved property.
Oh, absolutely.
That yeah, I think
Absolutely.
it worked out pretty well for him. I do want to say I really love Diedrich Bader as his neighbor
Oh my
Lawrence.
gosh.
He's Dion Waiters level, like just every time he shows up, just
Just
yeah,
delivering it. Yeah, he's great.
I just love the throwaway line when everything's falling apart in their plot and his friends leave and they're mad at him. He's like, "Hey Lawrence, you up?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You want to come over?" "No thanks, bud. I want you screwing up my life too."
Yeah, it was really funny.
That's a good joke.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. So again, we spent the bulk of our time
We
on Sixth
did,
Sense.
we
We don't
did.
need to hash out everything with Office Space, other than just like an enjoyable movie.
It is. It's really funny. Like the the stuff that, like I said, the stuff that I thought was hilarious at the time, I still thought was hilarious, and I just can't say enough how funny the two Bobs are and those scenes are.
Yeah.
So funny. And I'm glad you specifically mentioned Gary Cole by name, because he is like just I don't know, like it reminded me of almost like in my day growing up, like a Bill Murray like performance where it's just like not because it copies Bill Murray, but just because it's like this guy's like flying up on a different level in this movie. And
Mhm.
by, like you said, by almost doing nothing.
Yeah,
It's incredible.
He gets the joke.
He gets the joke
perfectly.
and he doesn't feel any need to like, wasn't that funny? Like he's so happy to be so dull because you could tell he's like, oh, this is a funny, like this is funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to have a moment like he does where he's addressing all the staff at like
Oh
one
my
meeting,
gosh.
and he does the and next Friday is Hawaiian Shirt Day.
Yep.
So and like nobody's reacting. He's like, feel free to do that if you want
Yeah,
to.
and to have that, just that discipline to play that so dull, like it's a skill. It
Yeah.
really, really is. I do want to shout out to like I knew this was coming. It's not like it's the funniest thing, but I do love when they get to take the copier out into like and just beat it to death.
Yeah.
and the music that's playing.
I'd
And
say
it's
that's
almost like a riff on like a Goodfellas scene or something, where instead
Yes.
of beating up a person, and like he pulls him off like they do have to with Joe
Right.
Pesci and Goodfellas. Like,
yeah.
job well done.
And
I mean,
that is
that's funny.
there's a lot of humor mined out of like constantly playing like kind of gangster rap over these like very nerdy white
Nerdy
guys
office
or,
guys,
you know,
yeah.
Indian guy,
Yeah.
whatever the one guy is. But yeah.
Yeah, it really satisfying. And like I said, it doesn't quite succeed as much to me when it's the Milton stuff doesn't land, and the she slept with this guy and all that stuff. I don't really care about, but the stuff that lands for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a great choice. I was glad. I was really happy to go back and rewatch that movie.
Yeah. So we're now what are we've done this like 4 times, I think. We've watched
think it was-
eight movies from 1999.
Yeah.
Got a lot more meat left on the bone.
There's
though.
definitely
some good
meat left on the bones.
movies.
I haven't quite picked my next one. Have you?
I haven't.
I haven't either.
I've got my
I need
list of
to-
options.
Yeah, I need to
but,
look at it.
But next week we are going to be reviewing Furiosa.
Next week, I don't think we'll be talking about subtlety and the quietness of
The
things
slow burn
and the mood and the atmosphere. I don't think, unless I'm
Yeah.
really, really surprised.
Yeah, but I do think we're going to be excited and having a lot of fun.
I think we'll be talking about Anya Taylor-Joy running people over with tanks, I think is what we'll be talking about.
Yeah, that's going to
Yeah.
be a lot of fun.
We both have high hopes for Furiosa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. But that was I think we have high hopes. but I think we have realistic expectations. I mean, it being a prequel, something like we know what we're getting into.
We do.
So I don't think, you know, I don't think we'll go in and be like, man, I really expected a lot more sharp dialogue
Yeah.
out of this
Yeah.
one. I
Yeah,
think it's good that we can have high hopes, but have a realistic expectation. I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So hopefully you guys will also be checking out
Go
that
check it
movie,
out.
joining us in our conversation about it next week.
Yeah.
And then we have something else on the docket, but I won't spoil that surprise.
Yeah.
But something coming up in a week or two.
Yeah.
With a guest. So
Yeah, we're excited.
all right. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Check out these two movies from 1999. They're both a lot of fun.
Yes. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.